Hello everybody, this is Ronan. In part 2 of my series, I'm going to show you how to cut the foam, and as you're cutting it, think about how the end product is going to look. For example, all this is foam. It was a straight foam, and how I cut it when I put it together, sanded it, such like that. On the inside, you can kind of see where some of those cuts happened. So as I go through this tutorial, you'll see how to cut, different tools to use, and basically some things to think about as you're doing it. I just went through and traced all the templates on my foam, so now I'm going to go through and cut them all out. But I want to show you how it looks. It's a pretty typical pattern. Fit as many as you can so you don't have as much waste afterwards. So some of the things I use to cut with are this metal ruler. This one I got that usually comes with another piece that's a square that kind of slide around. I just took that part off. It works awesome. Don't use wood because when you're cutting foam, the wood can get in the way too. So I've got another metal ruler. This one's just a lot longer. It's a yardstick or a meter for any of you guys outside the United States. Right here, this is a box cutter type knife or drywall or gypsum. It's really good because the blades are really cheap. That's about what they look like. You can take them out, put them in, and they're good for, I don't know, 20 or 30 foot worth of cutting. How you'll know is when you're cutting, you'll start to see these little edges coming on here. You can kind of see how rough that looks right there. This was one of my first projects I did, and I've learned a lot since then. Once it starts seeing that, then you can just change them and keep going. Something I've kind of upgraded to is what's called a hot knife. What this is basically a soldering iron with a different type of tip on it. This one, you can actually take the tip off and replace it with other parts too. But the good part about this is when you're cutting, it actually seals it too. You can actually use just an X-Acto type knife too. The difference is the blades of that are going to be a lot more expensive than the box cutting knife. Another one I use occasionally is this one here. It's Replaceable Blades. The reason I like this one is because depending on what I'm cutting, sometimes I need a wider cut than what the blade is for. As you're cutting, generally you're just going to go at a 90-degree angle, but sometimes you don't need to, or you don't want to. Depends on what it is. For example, when you're cutting here, you're going to cut 2 different angles. So it'll be, maybe you need that angle, or you need that particular angle. Depends on what you're doing. Or you're doing maybe a rounded thing, so you have one angle cut, and the other one a 90, because the more you do that, the more of a rounded shape you can get. Another way you can do is if you say you're doing a 90-degree like that, well, right there, that kind of shows up not that good. So you make 2 45-degree angles. This isn't exactly 45, but you get the idea that it can show up there. You can even sand that off to round it over or fill it in if you need to. Again, here's this gun that I made. You can see that I kind of tried to incorporate it into the paint scheme, but you can tell, for example, like here, where those seams are. Here's my new Warhammer that I've created. Right here, the seams are at 2 45-degree angles and sanded off to give it kind of a hammer type look to it. But here's all the seams too. You can barely see those. Any mistakes you do make, as you can see here, will show up in the final product, especially if you do weathering or black washing. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go through and cut these out, and then we'll go on to the gluing, part 3. Now I'm not going to cut it on this desk. The reason being is anything you cut through, whatever's underneath it, will get scratched up, it'll get cut. So this is kind of a nicer table. My wife will kind of get mad at me. So I've got an old plastic table that I've been cutting on, so I'll come do that. And when I'm done, I'll come back and we'll get to gluing it. Thanks.